Hi everyone, this is the Jazzy Tech coming to you with a quick review of the Kyocera event. The Kyocera event, we already know, was released by Virgin Mobile a few days ago, and I finally got the device, and you guys saw the unboxing earlier, and I'm just here to share my views on what I thought of the device and whether it would be the best device for you to go and purchase. So this is the Kyocera event. It's like I said, a budget device running Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich. And one of the things that was very profound about when I picked up the device out of the box was that how light it is. Even with the battery inside, it's a very light device and doesn't weigh much. You'll probably have to get used to it in your experiences typing and just getting used to holding the phone because of how light it is. You might not be used to it if you came from a heavier phone like I did. A quick overview of the outside. On the right hand side you have the sleep power button on the side. You also have this small groove here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but this small groove just allows you to be able to pry off the back cover so you could access the battery and the micro SD card slot. Now on the left side we have the volume rocker, and on the top we have our 3.5mm headphone jack and our micro USB port. Now also, something you may notice is this here. This is a small notification LED that they included on this phone, which is one of my favorite features of this phone because it allows you to, your phone sitting on your desk and you don't even have to hear it ring because all you have to do is see the blinking of the LEDs and you know what might be happening or what message you got from who. Now, when you first start up the device and you get to the lock screen, you'll notice that Kyocera really didn't change anything about this phone. And what I mean by that is they didn't add a proprietary type of skin like TouchWiz from Samsung or HTC Sense. They decided to leave it a more vanilla Android type of experience for the most part, which I appreciate because most times when other companies who create cell phones put a overlay on top of Android, they usually just drag down the phone's capabilities. The only thing they really changed is that you see this lock screen has a individual camera button, so you can, instead of grabbing this and flicking it to unlock it, you can grab this camera and flick it and you're immediately launched into the camera app where you can take a picture. We'll learn a little bit more about the phone's camera in a minute. But when you get into the phone, you just grab this and flick it to unlock it. You see very vanilla, basic Android experience, familiar to any Android user. The event has a 1 GHz processor and 512 megs of RAM, and it runs Ice Cream Sandwich pretty smooth in my experience. If you notice, going through each home screen, you don't really see any lag. You pull down the notifications bar, everything works pretty well. You bring up the apps drawer, everything runs smoothly, which is important. The last thing you want when you get a smartphone is for it to be lagging all the time and you can barely get anything done with it in the first place. With the stock phone app, it was easy to dial calls and to get to all of your numbers. You see the dialer is the default Ice Cream Sandwich dialer and everything, which is good. Of course, you have your contacts tab up here and your recent calls log here. Not really too much different to the app in functionality that was added. Something you will notice about the phone, I'm not sure if this is just a new addition to newer versions of Android, but if you have a Skype account, you'll notice if you go into your contacts list that your Skype contacts are merged in there. Now, after I ran a few tests, performance tests, after running the quadrant standard test, I got a score of 2,337. Which is pretty good. I'm gonna run the benchmark again just quickly for you guys. The benchmark placed the device on the chart just above the Nexus S and the HTC Desire HD, and it put it just under the LG Optimus 2X and the Galaxy Nexus, which is actually pretty good for a budget device. I think really that Kyocera packed in a lot of functionality into this phone for the price on Virgin Mobile. I also ran LinPack for Android and I got a score of 28 megaflops. I don't know if your results may be different with your phone, but that's the best score I got on this device. The performance was pretty good for everyday functionality, but when you're gaming, if you're a gamer, I tried Temple Run 2, and since Temple Run 2 is particularly graphics intensive and everything, it tended to lag out when I was starting. It might force close and everything, which is not a good thing, but this is, like was said before, a budget device. Angry Birds played very well without any problem, but sometimes it would lag in between playing, but once again, it is a budget device. Now, one of the most important parts of your phone is probably the camera. Nobody's really carrying around a huge camera with them all the time. Most people just pull out their phone and take quick snapshots. But that's really the problem with this phone. Even though this phone has a 3.2 megapixel camera, which should be able to do pretty well for this phone, the problem is that the camera is not good at all. The problem is basically that they didn't include autofocus, which I don't even know why that wasn't included in this phone. It was also omitted from the Rise, which got a lot of complaints from other Virgin Mobile users because there is absolutely no autofocus. So like if I go into the camera app here, you notice that when I flip it over and I try to take a picture, there's no autofocus. It just snaps. And it just leaves for very blurry pictures and terribly pixelated. I'll leave samples of pictures and videos from the camera up in links underneath the video. But you know, the lack of a good camera is really bad on a phone because of how often people use their cameras on their phone, and it really messed up what could have been a really the perfect budget device on Virgin Mobile. Now, when you're using the phone most of the time, you're probably texting, so you probably want to know how the keyboard is on this device. Well, we head into the messaging app and we create a message and we start typing. You'll notice that I have the stock Android keyboard up here. So I'll just say, hey, this is a little test for our review. And even, I don't have very large hands, so depending on how big your fingers are is how well you'll do with this keyboard. But I found that the keyboard was responsive. Now this phone does also include the swipe keyboard, which to be honest I've never really enjoyed swipe. I guess to each their own, you know, depending on what you personally like. Swipe is a keyboard that allows you to swipe your fingers across each letter so that you can type instead of just typing across like I was doing earlier with the Android keyboard. If I change the default to swipe, you'll see what I'm talking about. If we go back into the Messages app and we type a message, you see this keyboard comes up and you could say, hey, kind of drag your fingers across in a trail so that you can type. Now this really has never been efficient for me. Like I said, it depends on the person. You also have Google's voice dictation here in the messaging app, so if you want to bring that up. Hi, this is a test of voice dictation. And you see it's pretty accurate there, which is really great. It's one of my favorite features out of Android because it allows you to kind of be hands-free when you're doing something. Now, the keyboard also supports haptic feedback, so when you're typing, you'll feel a bit of a vibration and everything. Now, the phone, really one of the most important parts of your phone, besides the camera, like I was talking about before, is the battery life. Your phone isn't really any use to you if it's sitting being a paperweight in your pocket because the phone died halfway through the day. Now, this phone has an 1800 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty good for this phone. Personally, the battery life really varies depending on how you use your phone. If you're using your phone constantly all day, your battery life won't probably be as good as somebody who doesn't use their phone constantly all the time. So me using the phone lightly, not using it too much, I was able to squeeze 2 days of battery life out of it, which is pretty great for an Android device. Now, using it more heavily, I found that it got me through the day with no trouble. It wasn't dying out on me and I was trying to save battery before I got home. It stayed alive and it did not run out of battery too early, which was really good. I found that the battery life was good for this phone, but like I said, your mileage may vary depending on how you use your phone. Well, that was a quick review of the Kyocera event. If you guys want to see more reviews coming soon, I will be getting my hands on different handsets from Virgin Mobile and from other companies and doing my best to review them and bring you guys some nice reviews so you know which products you want to get out in the market and to take a look and see what they are like before you go out and buy one. So feel free to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed the video, and ask any questions if you want about the phone, about its functionality, anything I might have missed. Well, I'm the Jazzy Tech, and this has been a little review of the Kyocera event.